Hi. So in this video I'm going to show you how to critically read a job ad. And this is a skill set that you as a job seeker really want to have. Job ads tend to contain a lot of information, so you want to be aware of what's more important, what's less important. You want to you want to be able to figure out whether or not you're going to be a good fit for this job, and you want to identify keywords, key concepts, and key requirements or key activities that the job is going to involve that you can incorporate into your job materials to show them that you're going to be a good fit for this. So in this case, I've more or less at random chosen this job for a staff accountant or analyst in Westchester, Pennsylvania at Fairplay Inc. So one of the things that you would want to do if you were interested in this job, if you're an accountant or an account analyst or whatever it is, you would actually want to look into Fairplay Inc. and see what kind of company they are, what kind of stuff they do, and you would want to try and assess their values, assess their concerns, what's important to them, what kinds of things they are likely to look for in an employee. But that would involve more sort of research beyond the job ad itself, which you definitely do want to be doing. But this video in particular is going to focus on reading the job ad itself. So there's a couple of key components to most job ads. So the title of the job obviously is one of the most important things. That's one of the first things you're going to see, and it's one of the things that is going to tell you whether this is even in the right ballpark for you to be looking at. Beyond that, the next thing you want to do is read the general job description. So that's usually a paragraph, maybe a couple of paragraphs, and it's going to tell you the key things that they're looking for. So it's going to give you more information about the job itself, and it's going to give you more information about what kinds of things you're going to be expected to do. So this person, the person who gets this job, for instance, would do operational accounting, booking daily transaction activity, bank reconciliations, analysis of accounts receivable, and other, etc., etc. You can read it yourself if you want to. So if those are sets of things that you're not fundamentally prepared to do, you know this is probably not the right job for you. One thing that you want to be aware of when reading job ads is how people signal different things. So this job is entitled Senior Staff Accountant / Analyst. Senior is in quotation mark, or is in, parentheses here. So what does that mean? Well, that means ideally they would like to find a senior staff accountant / analyst. So that would be someone with more experience, someone who maybe has held a similar position for, say, a decade or two, someone who has extensive experience doing these kinds of things. But they're not exclusively seeking a senior staff accountant. So if you're fairly early in your career, you may just put in your job materials that you're seeking a staff accountant / analyst job. If you don't have that seniority, you may want to be aware that they are on the lookout for someone who's senior, but they're not necessarily only considering people who are senior. So that does somewhat open up the field in terms of you applying and having a decent shot at this. So once you've looked through the job description and attempted to figure out whether or not you're likely to be a good candidate, there's often a list of job responsibilities. So that's pretty important, but I want to skip over that just for the moment, because typically down at the bottom of job ads, you have some information about the job itself. So this one is very, very basic. Mostly we just learn that the job is full-time, but you'll often have lists of benefits. Maybe you'll have a salary range. You may have the location that the job is going to require you to live in, things like this. So this sort of concrete, specific information about the job itself is very, very common in the bottom portion of job ads, and so you want to be looking for that stuff as well. Now, within the responsibilities, this is a list of things that people have to do in this job. Some of these are going to be very straightforward in terms of what the type of position requires. So one would probably imagine that a staff accountant / analyst would be doing things like interpreting subsidiary accounts receivable and revenue transactions, preparing daily and monthly bank reconciliations, preparing daily cash forecasting reports, etc., etc. So some of these things you're going to expect that you would be doing, and so that's probably a good thing, because if you're trained to be an account analyst or a staff accountant, you're probably able to do those things. So that puts you in a good position. The thing that you really do want to look at, though, with the responsibilities is the kinds of words that keep coming up over and over and over again, because those are the words that you want to take out from the job ad and put into your application materials. So what verbs are they consistently using? Prepare is consistently used here. The word responsible is consistently used here. There's prepare again. So you want to look for words that are showing up multiple times. And especially verbs. So assists maybe, but I think things like preparing account balances, preparing account forecasts, preparing bank reconciliations, being responsible for. These are really good terms that you then want to incorporate into your own job materials. And the two sort of main places that you want to incorporate those, we'll talk more about this in the videos on tailoring a resume and tailoring application letters, which I will attempt to link in this video, and then I will link in the description of this video below. You want to take these kinds of verbs, you want to take these key terms that show up again and again and again in the responsibilities for the job ad. You want to use those to describe what you've done, your own experiences. So in the bullet points on your resume where you describe what you did within particular jobs, these verbs should be cropping up. In the application letter, when you're talking about the work that you've done, the things that make you a good candidate for the job, these verbs should be cropping up. So you want to be identifying the important verbs, the important ideas, and you want to be using those in your materials for two reasons. One is because if they're using an electronic screening system for candidates, that electronic screening system is going to be thinking about keywords. And so the keywords from the job ad are likely to be flagged by that electronic monitoring system that then says, all right, this person has done a lot of the things or has a lot of the experiences that we want. So that's likely to move your application materials toward the top of the pile. But the same thing works with human readers. So chances are that if a human reader is reading your application materials and they're seeing the same kinds of things that they put in the job ad, the same kinds of verbs and key concepts, they're more likely to say, yeah, that person sounds like the kind of person that we want. The other thing to be aware of, and actually I missed it when I was scrolling, is they often have a set of requirements or set of minimum qualifications, things like this. In this job ad, it's not particularly well marked. We get a sort of linguistic shift where we go from verb-driven statements about what the job candidate is going to do to noun-driven statements about what qualifications a person has to have to be competitive for this job. Oftentimes there's going to be a sort of new section heading here that would say something like minimum requirements or sometimes preferred requirements. And so preferred requirements is a tricky category because it's hard to tell just how much they prefer different things. And often a job ad is not going to give you a good sense of that. So that's something that you want to try and meet, obviously, as many of their qualifications as possible. You definitely at least want to meet any required required qualifications. So if it says must possess a bachelor's degree in accounting and have 5 to 7 years of experience, those are things that if you don't have those characteristics, you're unlikely to be considered or unlikely to be seriously considered. Whereas when it says something is preferred, that may mean that their ideal candidate would have it, but they're not sold on it, or that it may not be a make or break thing for the person that they're hiring, but it may in fact be a make or break thing. So this is one of the tricky things about preferred requirements or preferred qualifications is job ads rarely give you a sense of how preferred those things are. It's hard to tell often whether those are actual requirements for the job or whether they're just things that are in a sort of ideal wish list. But you want to have as many of the skills as possible, and without overloading your job materials, you want your job materials to demonstrate that you can use as many of these skills as possible and that you have as many of these characteristics as possible. Because that's ultimately the sort of key thing in reading these, or that's one of the two key things in reading these job ads. So the one is, am I fundamentally going to be qualified for this job? And the other is going to be, how do I shape my job materials in order to show them that I would be a good hire for this position? And again, we'll talk about that in a couple more videos where we talk about targeting resumes and targeting application letters.